started in 2016, filed that I-730, and he was not reunited with his daughters, who he had not seen. The youngest one was under 1 when he fled the country, and they were not reunited until the end of 2020.
Oh my
so
gosh.
over 15 years, and these girls are now young women.
It's a whole life.
Yeah.
It's a whole life. I think it's just like, you know, we have a lot of clients here at NIC. They would come and they would think they will be able to bring their husbands, their children in a year, in a couple of months. They don't even realize how long does it take to process all those documents. And this is a devastating decision they had to make, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, many of them didn't have any choice, but this is how, I guess, the life is and the law here and the system. Yeah, but what do you think in those processes you outlined right now? It seems a lot, like a very complicated, tremendously complicated. But talking and speaking about the backlogs, where do you think, on what stage does it get the most backlogged, like the most complicated? Is there any, or is it just an overall situation?
I would say the most complicated stage is that sort of in-between stage between when the case is at USCIS and when it goes to the State Department. And then when it goes to the State Department, every U.S. embassy that processes those cases processes them a little bit differently. And so that can be really challenging, because even as a legal practitioner who really focuses on following immigration law and following the changes in policies, there's still a lot of studying that I have to do. And I speak English as my native language. And so it can be extremely cumbersome to try to not just follow the process, but then also figure out the nuances with which embassy is it going to? What is the process to get the medical exam that is, part of the requirement? Do I have to file the application for the work permit with the initial application? Is the U.S. Embassy even very well informed about the refugee resettlement process and the family reunification process for refugees? I've seen them confuse that and conflate it with the immigrant visa process, which is initiated when a petition is started by a lawful permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. So there's nuances there, and sometimes there's some education that I've had to do with the State Department. So I really think it's as the case transitions from USCIS, from that initial phase, that family petition, and goes to the application phase for the beneficiary, where they're trying to get that travel document to be able to enter the United States. There's a lot that can get lost in translation there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a lot. So what I wanted to, I guess we're slowly moving to the why is it essential to just work with the practitioners who are authorized to do the immigration. Just because, like you mentioned, these people would have much more knowledge on how to do it right. And with all these complications, I guess if people would work with unauthorized practitioners and they cause mistakes in the forms itself, it will even, delays the process even longer. And plus, I think specifically working with the accredited representative who, like you mentioned, specifically trained to do immigration law, you guys also have access to extra resources to kind of expedite processes, right? So this is another benefit. So please just, if you can outline the benefits and the risks of just falling into something that is not authorized.
Absolutely. I think I could talk about this all day. It's a passion of mine to really educate folks on sort of the risks, but I'll start with the benefits of working with someone. You alluded to some of them, working with an organization that has dedicated itself to the practice of immigration law and is studying the ever-changing policies, the changes as new case law comes out and impacts pending applications or applications that were about to be filed. there are folks who specialize in that, and those licensed attorneys who specialize in the field of immigration, and those DOJ accredited representatives, they really dedicate themselves to keeping up to date on the consistent barrage of changes that we see. But beyond that, they also cultivate relationships. And so there are relationships that our office has cultivated with both of the senators' offices. Here in the state of Nevada, we're fortunate to have different offices within the state senate or within the senators' offices that focus on immigration law, and we can reach out to them if there's an issue with a case being stuck. There are relationships that we've formed with the local Reno field office for USCIS. We even work with the Reno Immigration Court. So we know the players, and that really impacts our ability to negotiate and to help advance cases. We're not witches and wizards. We don't have a magic wand or a crystal ball that we can pull out and say, okay, this is exactly how things are going to go. Things still come to fruition that we didn't anticipate. Policies change that we hadn't foreseen. And so it can still be really challenging, even with a practitioner on your side. But how much better is it to have someone in your corner who can help you? Yeah. I also understand the reality that, especially in our community, there is a dramatic shortage of practitioners in our area.
And this is what I wanted to mention.
Right.
It's like really in Reno here,
right.
We just have you guys who practice and support those who are in need of immigration applications and support and everything. And sometimes our clients have to wait for like months to get the initial appointment. And
right.
some of them get really, impatient and say,
right.
oh, I'll just file myself and I will be okay. I just need to do it myself. And what would you recommend to those? And from our conversation, it is obvious in any ways it will take a long time for not just the family reunification, I guess, for other benefits. Yeah. It is a pretty long process. And I guess patience in this situation is the clue.
Right. And I think it's hard to tell someone who is desperate to reunify with their family member that they need to be patient, right? Like I would struggle with hearing
Seems
that
like
too.
A cynic, expression. I don't know.
So it's challenging. We have, I think, 4 recognized organizations that have accredited representatives in Northern Nevada that practice. So those organizations practice immigration law. We have a handful of, that, as far as I'm aware, of licensed attorneys who specialize in immigration law. And, we try to keep a pulse on who is practicing what types of cases, because within the field of immigration law, we were discussing several cases here today, but there are so many more that we could dive into. And so it's challenging, and the need is great. And I get that pushback all the time of I have to wait weeks or months, or I've tried to find the ability to work with someone, or I can't afford a private attorney. And that's the unfortunate reality. So there are sometimes we offer workshops to try to educate folks so they can do it on their own. They can educate themselves. I'm not saying that there's no way, there's no hope. I never want to take away someone's hope, but also it's so risky because there are so many changes that transpire, and we see, unfortunately, a lot of bad actors in our community, a lot of folks who maybe have good intentions but don't have the knowledge and want to help but don't have that background. And so they'll say, oh yeah, my friend did the same thing. Let me help you and I can fill out your paperwork. Or I've seen some organizations pop up that present themselves as if they are authorized to do that work. And those really scare me because they don't necessarily know. They don't have the ability to cultivate the relationships that authorized practitioners are able to have. And there's not the recourse that you can have. So when you're working with a licensed attorney or an accredited representative, there's a complaint process you can file if someone messes up your case. At the end of the day, you as the applicant, it's on you. You are signing these documents and saying, I certify under penalty of perjury that everything in here is correct. And that's not just the form that you're filling out. It's all of the paperwork that you're submitting with that form. So I've heard of cases where people have someone who submits something that is invented or not true. And that can really mess up someone's case for an entire lifetime. And so it's really something I feel quite passionate about, that if you can at least get a consultation and talk to someone about what the process looks like, that's the bare minimum, I think, to really start the journey with an immigration process.
Yeah, and I just want to assure our audience and whoever is listening, I hope we have some clients who listen to this podcast as well, just to assure them that if you are going to the accredited representative, it is affordable. It's not that expensive, and you will be able to get that consultation. Sometimes you can get it for free, even in some cases, right? And just get that advice first before you decide to do things on yourself, by yourself, or having help from kind of friends of yours or somebody else. So what are the biggest consequences of like unauthorized practice and just like doing those forms by themselves?
I think it really depends on what errors can happen. The biggest consequence that comes to mind is if you file what we call a frivolous asylum claim. That can bar you from having any benefit ever in the United States. So you will never be able to overcome that.
Oh, it is pretty serious.
That's a pretty serious one, right? So, I say the scary one on the front end, but sometimes there's a box that's checked that's incorrect. And sometimes you can clarify that. In a lot of cases, you're submitting these forms and mailing them off to a face you'll never see. They're, reviewing them in, USCIS has these service centers where they process their applications, and the officers there are not someone that you interact with. And so you want to make sure your application, your filing is as complete as possible, because if you don't present your case, I would say, sort of the bare minimum issue you run across is further delays, right? Yeah. If you have to clarify an error that you made in your application, they'll issue sometimes a request for evidence or a notice of intent to deny that you have a certain period of time that you have to respond in. And missing that deadline could cause you to lose out on the application altogether. It could cause you to lose money if you invested in the filing fees. And so that can be really challenging. It can also cause you to potentially miss out on the benefit. I think I mentioned before, so with the refugee relative petition, that I-730, a refugee or an asylee has 2 years to file that petition and if they are not able to do it within those 2 years, they generally lose out on the ability to file to reunify through that refugee relative petition process.
This is the most significant lose, like when you lose time and you delay even more. That, amazing moment when you can hug your loved ones or a significant one. I don't know. Do you have any success stories though? Like, can you share something from your practice when families were finally able to reunite, and how did it go? And
so the two families that I mentioned before, one was from my practice when I was living in Baton Rouge, the mother and son, and their case was delayed for so many years. But I remember when we finally got the news that the son had his flight and he was coming to the United States, there was a whole group of us. We had a whole crew from our agency, including mom, of course. And we all went to the airport and had this huge welcoming party. And
oh my gosh,
he was so sweet. It was very emotional. I think anytime you have a new arrival, it's an emotional process. They're ending their journey and they're finally arriving. But when you have these two loved ones who are finally seeing each other for the very first time in years, maybe decades, it's quite emotional, and it's so exciting.
And I just want to add that this is so rewarding for you as a practitioner to just feel this, joy that you were able to finally help.
Even to just be a small piece of that,
just a small. And I think this is a big why, right?
Yeah.
People choose to.
I know it's kind of
of
selfish. It feels selfish for me to say, yeah, like I get a little bit of something out of it too, but it's so true. I mean, it's amazing. I'm so happy for those families when I finally see them get to be together. I mean, as a mother myself, I can't imagine making that difficult decision, being forced out of my country, being forced out of my culture, my customs, my language, and uprooting my life and being in this new situation and trying to learn that, desperately trying to reconnect with my loved ones, and that taking years and years and years, the relief that I would feel as a mom to be reunited with my babies. I can't even imagine that. I can't fathom. And so to see those families finally, after years of fighting, after years of worrying, after years of, and our technology's come a long way. Now they can
at least talk,
FaceTime,
right?
or, they can talk to each other. But it's such a difference when they have to almost relearn each other, right? Because it's been so long.
Yeah. And another thing, Annie, I just forgot, I think we should mention, is that sometimes when the people are in refugee status, they can't even leave the country. They can't go back.
Correct.
That's why it's another thing, another side.
It's
why
another
they
level.
They cannot see each other. Because some people might think, oh, why wouldn't you just go to some other country and just meet your loved ones and, connect with them and go back? No, it's not an option in many cases.
In many cases, you're absolutely right. Not only is it a factor that every refugee has to apply for permission from the U.S. government to be able to depart. They have to apply for what's called a refugee travel document. Now, even with that refugee travel document, they can't return to their country of origin, that country that they're fleeing, because they have fled that persecution from that home country, and it's either the government or forces beyond the government's control. So by returning to their home country, in a lot of ways, they're forfeiting their status in the United States. And so they have to apply for those refugee travel documents. They have to specify when they're traveling, where they're traveling, which countries are they going to. And so it's not always practical. And a lot of times, I think about the clients that we've served that resettled from Afghanistan. And, the harrowing story is just from how they departed their country.
It was so hectic.
It was so hectic. And in a lot of cases, there were, some men that I've worked with whose wife and children are left behind. And the way that government is, I say that government, that the Taliban is treating women, and knowing that the men, the heads of the household, are not even there to provide for and to protect their children. I can't imagine the angst that provides, the agony, to be separated. And so it's a harsh reality to know your family's in an unsafe environment. You can't get to them, and the process to get them here is going to take years. And so, yes, it's so important that those individuals have a grasp on what the reality is, how long it's going to take. But it's also, I think, important for us as a community to recognize how challenging that is, and how can we uplift and support those individuals, give them the support that they need, and try to make it, less agonizing to be separated from your loved one. Try to find ways to bring those families together. And right now it's really challenging because we have no answers for how long some of those cases may take, because in a lot of cases they're banned from being processed. And so there's no action being taken, and that's challenging because there's no answer that can be provided.
Yeah, and it's devastating. We could not say anything too. The only thing we could say is just sometime in the future it will happen.
We hope. Yeah. We hold on to that hope.
Yeah. So Annie, the last question I would like to ask you. So since we spoke a lot about the challenges and complications of this whole process, are there any ways, in your opinion, that we could overcome, or not just we in general, like us as a community, as a policymakers, do you have any thoughts on how it could be made more humane? Because it is also very devastating to think that some random people would receive random paperwork, not even knowing what's going on the other side, but behind all those papers are faces and real lives and stories.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of scary rhetoric surrounding the topic of immigration. It's really charged. It's political. It's difficult. But you're right. Behind that paperwork, behind the rhetoric, are families who are impacted, are families who want to do the best that they can to support their children and, their grandchildren and keep moving forward. And that's why they come here, because they believe in some way in that American dream and that ability to move forward. And so I think, as much as policymakers can, this is me speaking in my personal opinion, I would encourage them to really think about the humanity, to look beyond the numbers and the paperwork and everything and see the human element behind it and try to focus on that when making those policy decisions. It's challenging because I think there's such division and such fear. And when I mention fear, I mean, fear of the unknown. And so I think the way that we overcome that is by getting to know our neighbors, getting to know our new neighbors, our new arrivals who have come from different backgrounds. I mean, I mentioned selfishly what brought me into this field is getting to know other cultures. Oh my gosh, I have eaten the best food, And so getting to know folks and really starting at that individual level, having conversations and sharing, breaking bread together.
This is so amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way that you really start to make an impact and understand we're all human and we're more alike than we are different. Yeah. And I think that's such an important starting point. And, I hope that things will change from there and that we see a difference. And then, also advocating for helping to bring people together, I think, as much as possible. Asking questions, being curious. I think these are all ways to really make a big difference.
And speaking to that, Annie, I just want to mention to our audience again, if you'd like to get more globalized, we have our gala coming up in April.
I'm so
just visit our website and see if you'd like to participate and attend and support our mission here in Northern Nevada to uplifting refugees and providing that support to the underserved communities. So just go to our website and purchase your ticket and come see what we have for you prepared. Thank you so much, Annie, for attending our episode today. We're very blessed. Again, I just can't repeat it, enough. We hope to see you again sometime in the future for another topics, maybe.
I'm sure we can find something.
Next for our next episode. So today we kind of discussed the legal side of the family reunification process, and we tried to explain a little how this works and how complicated it is in terms of the procedures and policies and the processes. Next episode, if you stick with us, we have a client and the real people who are in this process right now, and they're suffering, and it's more on an emotional level and how it feels to be separated for so long. So follow us for more, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you.